Hello, Facebook. This is Robert Jenkins. We are back again today. We want to talk about some things that God has been laying on my heart. We know that Father's Day is coming up. So I want to talk about some things today concerning fathers and sonship and things like that. And I'm going to be very transparent. And I hope that it'll be helpful to you. I've been through a lot of things. I almost talk about it on every time I teach about my father and different things that I've been through. So I'm going to share some things. It is so important that we understand the importance of being a father and being a godly father. It's so important that we understand how to be a son. So I want to talk about some things. I'm going to use some scriptures, but I'm also going to use some experiences that I've been through in life. We go through so much, especially as a male or as a man, when you don't have a father in your life. And that responsibility is such a heavy responsibility. And I think that we don't always understand it. Natural fathers as well as spiritual fathers in the ministry. I'm going to talk about the difficulties of being a spiritual father and different things that come along with that. So, and I'm going to do it consistently. I may do it 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. I may do it 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm just, as God give me things, and He's given me so much. I have 12 pages so far of things that He wants me to talk about. So we're going to do that up until Father's Day. And we may even do it after, because I'm not the type of person who is event conscious or holiday conscious. I think we should be led by the Spirit and not by holidays. But God did lay that on my spirit. And that's been on me for a while to teach. You'd be surprised at the things that you've been through in life, that the purpose of those is to help other people come out. So never go through a storm and not learn the lesson. Never go through a storm and not learn the lesson. So I want to talk about some things in fatherhood. And I titled this, I Still Need My Father. I grew up without a father in my life for a long period of time. My mother and father divorced, I believe, I would probably say at the age of maybe 5 or 7. Somewhere around there, my mother and father divorced. I was very young. And then she remarried again at the age of 12. But I've always longed for a father. I don't know what happened. I'm going to go through some things. I'm going to be transparent and share that with you. My mother had me in the womb. You know, I was told this story later on. So a lot of things I'm telling you is not that I knew them as a babe or in the womb, but these are stories that I was told. But I was told that my mother got pregnant in the backseat of a car. They were teenagers in school. She got pregnant. My father had to come out of high school, quit high school to take care of me. My grandfather told him, you're going to raise that boy. You're going to be a father for that boy. So in the old school, if you got somebody pregnant, sometimes they'll make you marry. So the marriage wasn't based upon purpose. It was based upon obligation. So my father began to do that. But I believe that something happened to me in the womb. I really believe that something transpired. So even though this is a message to men and sons, if you're a woman and you listen to this, I believe that when my mother was carrying me, I believe she had so much bitterness. She wanted to be a nurse. She wanted to do some things. She had to drop out of school. I remember growing up, my mother didn't have a high school diploma. So she went through a lot in her pregnancy, and I believe that I felt that. I believe that, and she would tell me things like, you know, she didn't want the baby. There's even stories about how she tried to destroy me while I was in the womb. She tried to have a self-made abortion. She bled, but I didn't die. She went to the doctor, and the doctor said, I don't know why this boy is still alive. You have lost so much blood. So I believe in the womb, psychology or something happened, because when a woman is pregnant with a baby, that baby can feel the emotions. It can feel the unwantedness. It can feel the rejection. And I believe something happened to me psychologically in the womb of my mother, that I desired to be embraced. I think I felt that she didn't want me. I felt her pain. And she had a lot of reasons, and I want to speak to as women as well as men. I think one reason why she probably didn't want me is not that a mother always doesn't want her child, but I think she looked at my father's life. My father was a very handsome guy. Women were crazy over my father. He was a musician. He traveled. And I think that she didn't want that type of man to be in my life or to influence. It didn't feel like he was qualified. And I'm just saying these are the stories that I heard. So on one side, I felt like my mother didn't love me and rejected me based upon how I was born. The other side of me saying that she loved me so much that she didn't want me to be embraced with the wrong covering or the wrong influence. However the case may be, I don't know exactly. I just know I came out as a child desiring to be loved. I wanted to be loved by my father. I had a desire. And people would ask me when I was young, when I was 5 and 6 years old, they called me Vale. And they would say, Vale, what do you want to be when you get older? And I used to say things like this as a child. I want to be a father. I want to be a husband. And I really got those impressions because I wanted to replace what my father didn't give to me. I was hoping even as a child that one day I would have children and I would be able to give them love like love was not given to me. And then I wanted to be a husband because I watched my mother go through so many boyfriends and wanting someone to love her and to embrace her. So I thought that if I get married and I love the woman, that I'll be healing my mother and healing my own pain. Now, this is how I was born, and whether you know it or not, there are so many men that are shaped in things from the time that they were born. And a lot of times we don't talk to men. What happened to you when you was in your mother's womb? Did she want you? Was there rejection? Was she bitter? Did you hear stories like when she's pregnant? A lot of times a woman is pregnant and she'll make statements. If I didn't have this baby, I can go out. If I didn't have this baby, I can work a job. Now that I got this baby, I'm losing all this weight, or I'm gaining this weight. Or now that I got this baby, my hair's falling out. And whether she know it or not, she's shaping the attitude of her child in the womb to make him feel like that he's in the way already and he hasn't even got here yet. And we can do that sometimes out of ignorance, out of our own pain. Sometimes our own suffering causes us to do that. So a lot of times we don't talk to men and say, in your mother's pregnancy, was you welcome? Was you loved? Was you embraced? Was there excitement for it? Do you remember? Did you hear any stories? Because that have a whole lot to do with men not becoming men, or don't know how to become a man, or already birthed feeling like they're rejected. So they have a victim consciousness on them, feeling like no one is going to love me. Why do I believe that you ever can love me or respect me? Because my mother didn't love me. My father didn't love me. I'm nobody. I don't have identity. My dad wasn't there to name me. My mother named me. There's a whole lot of psychological things that go on that shapes us. And we, even in the Bible, you'll find out when David sinned with Bathsheba and he finally repented to God, he wrote about his experience in Psalms 51. And in Psalms 51, he says something, I was born in sin and shaped in iniquity. Something had shaped him. This is what he was telling God. In other words, he was saying, God, you really can't fault me for what I just did because I have been shaped in iniquity. And if you study David's life and study who his father was, Solomon being his father, Solomon had all these women. He had some generational consciousness that was in his lineage and that shaped him. And a lot of times, this is not an excuse because you're called to be a man of God. You're called to be holy. But this is a system of thinking that you need to embrace and then overcome by the will of God and by the word of God. But this is real things. And a lot of things shaped us as men. And we didn't know how to be a man. And even from our birth, because before you can be a man, you must be a male. And if your malehood consciously, the education you should get as a male growing up as a young man, if you don't get the right teaching, the right example, you don't see the right things, then you'll probably never become the man that God called you to be. Only by the grace of God can you get there. So I'm saying all this and I'm being transparent because this is how Robert Jenkins' misery started. This is how his confusion started in his birth. Not feeling like I'm loved. And I know that based upon my conversations. I've always longed for a man to hug me, to wrestle. I used to envy other young men whose father was in the house and would take them out and play baseball with them or go to the game with them. I remember having my first drum set. My dad wasn't there to hear my first beat. And drums was the very first thing that I realized that I love. And I needed to have my father there to affirm who I was as a drummer, but he wasn't there. And this has a whole lot to do with me as I grew up. I never got a chance to connect with other musicians and grow up as a pair. I used to look at different drummers and keyboard players, and the drummer got this guy and he plays with this guy. The keyboard player has this drummer, but I never had that connection because I didn't even know how to connect. And this all come from isolation. And it had everything to do with all the bad choices that I made in life. Didn't know how to be a man. And it shaped from that place. So I'm talking about this. So that's very key that we come to know who we are and how we birthed us. The devil was out to kill me from the time I was born. Even before I was in my mother's womb, I was chosen by God. So if I was chosen by God before I was in my mother's womb, the devil was preparing also to bring me down before I was in my mother's womb. So we have to understand that, and that's very key. So I came here wanting to be loved, wanting to be held, wanting to be appreciated, wanting to be affirmed. I needed affirmation. Also, it's very important. Even when Jesus was at the was being baptized, God the Father comes out, a dove comes out, is symbolic of the Holy Spirit, and he says, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." God says that to Jesus, even though they're one. He says, "This is my beloved Son." He gives him affirmation. So when Jesus is led into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil, and when the devil says, "If you be the Son of God," Jesus did not fall for any temptations because his sonship had been already identified. He had already heard his Father declare to him that this is my beloved Son. That was so important for the humanity of Jesus. Why? Jesus was supposed to be born by a virgin. No one had ever had this before. And his credibility was being jeopardized by the rumors of the town. So, and then he had 18 years of his life missing. So he needed affirmation from the humanity side to say who I am. And he needed that affirmation, not privately, but publicly. God announced that in front of the whole world. At the baptisms, the Pharisees was there, the Sadducees was there, all the doubters was there. But God says, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased." I'm not pleased because he's going to raise the dead, or because he's going to feed 5,000, or because he's going to walk on water. I'm pleased because he's my Son. And that affirmation is so needed as a man. As a man, we need to be affirmed that we are somebody because our daddy said that we are somebody, and affirm our sonship. Not because I can play the drums or play the piano or play the bass, or I'm a football player, or I'm a superstar, or I'm a basketball player. Not because I have on FUBU or I got on Jordans, but because this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased, because that's my Son. And we need affirmation. And when a man does not get true affirmation from his daddy, or from a daddy principle, from someone who loves him and adore him because he's made in his image and in his likeness, then that man will put on other forms of clothing to try to have his identity. And this is why a lot of men are constantly falling in sexuality, or pornography, clothes, designs. They have to be the biggest eagle in the room. They have to be the smartest in the room. They always have to have the best of clothes on, because the identity of who they are, they have not have true affirmation from their Father. And there's nothing worse than having a great and awesome a vessel, but it's cracked. I know what it is to be a cracked vessel. I know what it is to be cracked at the top. And I don't care how much people pour into you, you leak out. So they can tell you they love you on Monday, but on Tuesdays you wonder do they love you again. And then on Tuesday they tell you they love you, then on Wednesdays you're doubting their love because you're a cracked vessel. And most men are cracked vessels. They've been cracked in the time they've been born, because there was no true affirmation to say, "I love you, son," not because you get straight A's, but because you're my son. You can get straight A's because you're my son. But straight A's don't define you. Clothes don't define you. I define you. That's why the Father names his sons in the Bible. And this is so important to our fatherhood and so important to our sonship. And if you have lacked that, make sure that you constantly listen. I'm going to go through almost my whole entire life and give you excerpts of what happened to me and how I had to recover, because I long for love. And when you long for love, that's how opinions of others become so weighty in your life. People ask me, why does it mean so much to you how other people feel or what they say? Because I needed their approval to feel like I was somebody. So if I would dance for you, if I would play the drums for you, if I would agree with you, then maybe you will like me and you love me. Then maybe I'm valuable. Maybe I am somebody, because somebody that I admire now admires me. And we fall into these traps because we don't have identity. And that's how I got there. So I was birthed wanting this love and long for it. And it's so deep because, and I'm going to be transparent, the enemy began to put so many crazy things around me. I'm going to talk about those things that try to shape my identity. But thank God for his promises and for his word, that what God God has declared, what God has chosen, he protects. But this is very key and it's very deep things that we must understand. So if you're struggling with a husband or a son or a father, let's have conversations about them. It's easy to say you're no good dad, or you're a dog, or stop doing this and stop doing that. But you must have an understanding. Understanding keeps us. And if you don't have an understanding of how the tricks of the devil is trying to destroy every great man of God, every great person, every great son, he's trying to destroy families. And you must go to the course of it, go to the root of it, and pull it up and allow God to replant his promises in his words. So Robert Jenkins was born with some rejection. Not only that, if you know anything about me, and I'm going to be transparent, I have 4 names. My name is Robert James Duvall Jenkins. It's my name. Well, my mother wanted to name me James Duvall. I was supposed to be named James Duvall. My grandfather is named James, and we call him Elder J.B. Jenkins. He was James Bell Jenkins, and on his car he would have J.B. Jenkins. Well, my mother had so much respect for my grandfather, she wanted to name me James, but she loved the actor Robert Duvall, so she was going to name me James Duvall, and that was supposed to be my name, James Duvall Jenkins, and I was going to be normal like any other child and have, a first and a middle name and a last name. Well, the story that I was told that my father wasn't there at the time that I was born. I don't know where he was. I don't know if he was playing. I don't know if he was being the playboy that people say that he was, and he was wild and mischievous. I don't know what was going on, but I knew that something happened where he wasn't there. Then when he finally showed up, he said, "This boy looked like me. This is my son. I want him to have my name." So all of a sudden now my name ended up being Robert James Duvall Jenkins. Now, when I was told that story, I told you that something went on psychologically with me wanting to be loved. And I'm hearing all these stories. Who would tell their son or tell their baby boy, their oldest, that I didn't want you, I tried to abort you. Those things were traumatizing to my consciousness. And I want you to know something. I'm not the only child that went through this type of stuff. Most of your great men of God has went through some crazy childhood experiences, things that traumatize their mind. And the enemy uses these things. This is not to be negative against my mother or negative against my father. The reality is that we don't fight against flesh and blood. The enemy was trying to destroy me because of who I was in God. And he was going to use anybody that didn't know. And a lot of times when we are young and we are ignorant, we don't have a clue how much the enemy is trying to be involved while we are ignorant. That's why it's very key to come to know God as quick as possible. The Bible says, understand God even in your young or even in your youth, because the enemy is working. The enemy is working. He's working. That's very key. Even when it came to Jesus, he was trying to kill Jesus. He had people studying the star, waiting on the star to be born. And even when the wise men said the star is in the east, we're going to worship that child. The enemy said through Pharaoh, "Let me know when you find him," because he wanted to destroy him, because Jesus was coming to take the kingship of Pharaoh. And whether you know it or not, your birth has come to take the kingship of a lot of things that are working from the demonic. You are born to change the generational curses in your family. You are born to stop people from being molested and raped. You are born to stop people from having no higher education than high school. You are born for such greatness and so much prosperity is supposed to be in your life, spiritually, soulishly, and physically. And the reason why you're born is to make so many changes, to stop some things in your life or even in your family. Sugar diabetes will no longer be in your family because it's going to stop with you, and cancer and so many things. You're going to be the first preacher in your family, the first one who owns the first house, the first one who comes out of the projects, the first one who gets a master's degree. So much, the first one who owns his own bank and own business. You have destiny on your life. And when the enemy understands that and knows that by studying your lineage, studying what's going to come through, how God has been using your father and your grandfather, or even in your environment, there's some prophecies that has been told. The enemy heard those prophecies. Even some women, when you're in church and the pastor say, there's a child born inside of you, and that child's going to be a prophet. I guarantee you that ever since that prophecy came, the enemy has set up a strategy to make sure your son never become the prophet that man of God prophesied. This is so real. So we're not attacking mothers and fathers. We're attacking the enemy who will try to come against anybody that is born with destiny on their life. So what happened to me in these four names when they began to tell me these stories, how my mother had some problems and some issues. She cried so much during the pregnancy, and I am extremely sensitive. I believe that comes from the tears that she shed. But I'm going back to the four names. But when they told me about the four names, the first thing I thought of, I already feel like that I wasn't loved, I wasn't embraced, I wasn't welcome. And then let me even put on top of that, then God had the nerve to give me a gift that was not embraced, make me different. The way I talk is different, the way I respond, the way I think. I'm already not feeling love, and now I'm unique and I'm rare. And I don't know how to define uniqueness and rareness from being odd or being different or being don't fit in. And so those things begin to collide in my emotions. I didn't know how to pick out God's design versus how the enemy would twist it. See, because a lot of times we don't live from truth. We live from perceptions, and our perceptions of our reality can be so distorted. We can be delusional. So, and I became this person. So when I was told that my father wasn't there to name me, the first thing I thought was that I wasn't even loved enough for my dad to be there to even name me. You coming after the fact? Now I got to walk around with four names. And I went through that in school. When I was in elementary, they called me Duvall. And then when I went to junior high, they called me Vale. And when I went to high school, I started saying my name was Robert. I was trying to find my identity, but I didn't have a dad to be able to explain. In this story that I'm telling you, I've never had this conversation with my father. He's never sat down and said, this is why you have four names, son. This is why this is important. Things like that. My mother told me these stories. So these have so much to do. And you have to know the beginning of something. Even when we study Genesis in the Bible, we study how did murder come into existence. We have to study Cain. And why did Cain kill Abel? Why did the first black on black crime was in the Bible? We must know the origin. How did I become a sinner when I haven't even sinned yet, but I'm born a sinner? Because Adam sinned. And if we don't know the origin of things, we can't help develop things or put things back in the right order or put things back in alignment with God. This is so key. So I'm hoping I'm speaking to you. And I'm hoping I'm blessing you as a man that maybe you can't tell your story. Maybe you're not confident enough or bold enough to be transparent. So I'll be that vehicle right now. I'll be that sacrificial lamb to share with you what can happen to a man. So I have these four names and I'm feeling not loved. I'm feeling like I don't fit in. I'm feeling odd. I'm going through a school changing my name and getting all these different names because I'm trying to find my identity. All the while I'm trying to find my identity, one thing I do know I can play drums. I do know that I can study the Bible for hours and hours and it don't bother me. I can get revelation. I begin to, when I would walk to school and I would see a stop sign and I would hear God speak to me and say the stop sign, red means the blood and white means purity and how you have to stop. And when you see the blood of Christ, and I would begin to preach from stop signs. And I didn't even know what was going on with me. But even though I was lost in my identity, my gift was still being revealed. It was being unfolded. I would look at trees and preach at trees, and I would preach at birds, and I could just see God in all things. So this guy who is lost in his identity didn't have a father to identify, didn't have a father to affirm him, didn't have no one to give him clarity on his uniqueness, but all while he was confused, he was still gifted. And that is the most complicated thing you ever can experience, is being saved and sad, of being gifted and confused. And I went through this for years of my life because people couldn't identify. So either people would pick what side they want to deal with. They would want to pick the preacher side, the guy who's gifted, the guy who has revelation knowledge, the guy who can teach my Sunday school at 12 years old, the guy who can almost recite the Bible from word to word. Or you want to deal with the guy who's confused, who don't know his identity, that every time he goes to a different school, he changes his name. See, so there's a whole lot going on in manhood. And that's why I label this, I need my daddy, because I needed somebody to affirm. And the enemy was so wise in trying to destroy me that my mother, in her second marriage, she married a guy, and this guy was so lovable. I mean, it was so deep for how much love that he has. I'm not going to call his name out, but I'm going to give you some principles. But he had so much love. But this guy who had so much love that could embrace me, that could hold me, that could hug me, this guy struggled with homosexuality. So here I have a guy in the house who struggled with homosexuality. I would wake up one day, his hair would be green. Next day, his hair would be be orange. Next day his hair would be purple. I would see false eyelashes on the sink. They wasn't my mother, they was his. But the same guy who struggled with his identity, changing his hair, very moody, took all kind of pills, Placidels, Dormains, Oxycontins, all these different type of pills. This is when I was young now. I'm talking about 12 years old. I'm talking about in 1975. And even though his identity was confusing, he didn't know who he was in his identity, but he knew how to love. And he would wake up one morning and he would say, today is called I Love You Day. It's not Christmas, it's not New Year's, it's not Easter, it's I Love You Day. And he would just put us in the car, have a picnic basket. We go to picnic basket and we sit there and play games or whatever the case. Sometime I would come downstairs and he done bought all kind of clothes. It wasn't school clothes. It wasn't for school. It wasn't for summer. It was just because I love you. But he struggled with his identity. I already was confused in my identity, but here's a man in my life who struggled with identity. Then I joined up with some singers, start playing with some famous singers, and they was either homosexual or lesbian. And then my father in the gospel, who gave me my license, he struggled with homosexuality. The enemy was trying to destroy that I would never, ever embrace a real man, a man who loved God and lived holy and lived sanctified. But he wanted me to believe that they could give me love and they could hug me and they can have an I love you day, even in perversion. So I didn't know the healthy side of family, the healthy side of a man. I remember when I was growing up, I had to be about maybe 30 or 35, and I was with one of my friends who he struggled with his identity because his stepfather raped him and his sisters most of their lives. So me and him had a lot to share because we had a lot in our pain. But I remember being with him, and it was his wife's birthday, and he went to go to the store with me. I'm gonna get my wife a dress, and he knew his wife's dress size, and he knew what she would like. And I was amazed this first time in my life see a man who cared enough about his wife that he knew his dress size. These are the things that I struggled, and even though I was struggling with my own manhood, knew in my whole DNA, I'm not gay, I'm not born gay, I'm a man. But the people around me who love God struggle with homosexuality. The people that embrace me in the music industry struggle with homosexuality or lesbian. The enemy wanted me to be confused. And when you don't have the proper father in your life who understands who they are, because you can't even be a father to the son unless you've been a son to the spiritual father. And our whole purpose as fathers is to lead our sons to God, because only God has the manuscript for how to be a man and how to be a father. But this is something that we go through all of our lives. So when we look at entertainers and we say homosexuality is so much in the entertainment field, or lesbians, because we have to go back to the identity. Well, you ever taught how to be a man, and who showed you how to be a man? Where was your father? And I'm telling you, the Bible is very clear, and it gives us a direct path of how to be a man of God, the necessaries of being a father. God shows us how to be a father. Even Joseph shows us how to be a stepfather. But we got to get back to the word of God, and we got to have conversations. And I'm speaking to you, man. There's so many men now that are on the down low, and they're struggling, and it's something that we don't talk about. I'm not trying to criticize. I'm telling you that when God created you, he created you in his image and in his likeness. And if you can say that you were born gay, you saying God was born gay because you was created in the image and likeness of God. That's not true. But I understand that there's circumstances in our lives, either their rejection or not having the proper identity, that we struggle. And even though you may not be struggling with homosexuality or lesbian, you're still struggling with identity. You can't be caught unless you got on all the same clothes, designer clothes. Every time you're around, you have to be the biggest man in the crowd. Your ego is so huge. That's a false identity too. You can have many fig leaves, or you think you're the man, or you can lift weights and have muscles everywhere because you're trying to hide the outside. You have to look strong because inside you know you're real weak, and you don't know how to be strong without being a bully or without being expressive. There's so many false identities that we put on. Some people got to get their hair cut every week because you don't love yourself unless your hair is perfect. You can't love yourself unless you're driving a certain car, or unless you have a certain woman. She has to have long hair and blue eyes and be thin. There's so many things that we can be caught up to because we don't have a man to teach us how to be a man. It has nothing to do with how many women you can have. I don't care if you can have 100 women. Can you have one woman, love her, respect her, and respect yourself, and be the person that God called with you? Adam walked with God before he ever walked with Eve. Now we want men who want to be with Eve, but they don't want to be with God. So there's so many things, and I'm just being transparent of the course that the enemy tried to set up for Robert Jenkins and how I had to struggle. And I would watch TV sometimes, and I would watch certain shows, and I would see a man with muscles, and I would jump down and try to do 50 push-ups because I was trying to find my manhood. And I found mine in hiding, and just being honest with you, in hiding through the Word of God. And I thank God that my hiding mechanism was in the Word, because some people hide in cocaine, some people hide in women, some people hide in being egotistical, some people hide in controlling others people's thinking. Mine was the Word of God. But I still had to, even in the Word of God, trying to hide there and using God as my covering, because I cried and I sang songs to God every day. But I wanted to know, who am I? Who am I, God? What is my real spiritual name? Who am I in the spiritual realm? I know they call me Robert, and they call me Vale, and they call me Duvall. Some people call me Jinx, and there was a time when people call me Jinky Jinx, and I felt like my life was cursed because my last name is Jenkins, and I'm jinxing everybody, and I'm Jinx. See, these are all things that we go through in our identity, and if you are a wife right now, your husband may never share with you some things that he struggled with in his identity. Let him listen to this, because we need to be healed as men. We are suffering. We're suffering, and we don't know because we don't always have a father. And I'm going to give you some statistics how 36% of all children go to bed without a father, without a covering. We don't know what it is to wake up as a man of God and see our father on his knees praying. We don't even know what it is to go to church with our dad and to be in worship. And most of the time when we see men in church worshiping, it's usually be the men that we believe are struggling with homosexuality. When the last time you seen a strong man who was faithful, who had integrity, had character, and he shouted for 15 minutes? See, we don't see that. So when you say men don't bless God, because we don't have an example of a real man that we call a real man. We're looking for the Arnold Schwarzeneggers. We're looking for the Bruce Lees in our life. We're looking for the Denzel Washingtons. We're looking for them. When the last time we seen a person that we admire, like a Denzel Washington, speaking in tongues and crying on his face? We're crying out for our identity, and we was raised up not to know this type of man. We don't know the Elijahs in our life. We don't know those type of men, so we suffer. So Robert Jenkins is going to be transparent until Father's Day, maybe after Father's Day, and share how do we get back, because God knows this. God was with us. He never left us nor forsake us. So he was with us. What is he trying to teach us from these examples? Can you recover when you didn't have a father in your life? Can you recover? Can you get over the bitterness? If your identity is so messed up that you are struggling with some things, can you come out of those? And I'm telling you, yes, without a doubt, you have the power to become the sons of God. He came into his own received him not, but as many as received them, to them he gave power to become the sons of God. You can become what God has called. You can be that man of God if you're not paying child support, you're not taking care of your son, you ain't called your son in years, you ain't talked to him. I'm telling you that the same thing you've been through when your father wasn't in your life, your son is going through worse, because every generational it gets worse. So I'm telling you, just as much as you needed a father in your life, how you dare not call your son, how you dare not look at your son, how you dare not embrace that. And if you feel like you're not equipped, then what are you doing to be equipped? So that's very important. So we're going to talk about so many things and deal with that, but I wanted to be transparent and how I became confused and longing for my identity. And I went years and years. Now, thank God that church became my love. I was in love with church. I went to church constantly. I would cry when I couldn't go to church. Thank God for my mother that she did take me to Bible study, and I would study the Bible with her. My mother would read the scriptures to me. My mother had so much wisdom, and my mother was confused too with her identity. She struggled with her father. Her father wasn't in her life as much. He struggled with alcohol. You know, if you go back into a lot of generations, our fathers and our mothers, they drank like crazy. So we lost a lot of our mothers to alcohol. We lost a lot of our fathers to slavery, or we lost them to racism. We lost them to being so bitter for what they had to deal with when they went on the job force. But we must recover, and we cannot continue this generational, I call it generational consciousness, from one level to another level of consciousness, we must begin to say, man of God, son, I love you. Daddy is sorry for not being in your life. Daddy didn't know how to be a daddy. Daddy still don't know how to be the daddy. But I do know the Father, the creator of the world, and he can guide us and teach us how to be a father. And I'm going to deal with a lot of father stories and how to come back as a father, how to redeem. God is a redeemer. He can redeem that. If you struggle with who you are as a man, I'm going to show you how to know who you are. If you never drive a Rolls Royce, if you never make $1 million, if you never wear a Nikes, or if you never live in a nice house, if you never get married, if you never meet a nice woman, I'm going to show you how to be a man, just you and God, through these principles, through my life, through my testimony, and show you that it is redeemable. And I'm still trying to redeem some things. I'm still trying to learn and grow into God. And I thank God that he has walked with me every step of the way. So that's very key that we understand that Robert Jenkins got lost and he had to find himself. And what happens is, because I was so gifted in playing the drums, and I began to play for, and I don't want to call all people's names because I don't want to not cover our father's nakedness, but I do want to deal with the principles of sin. But when I begin to be in the entertainment, the gospel entertainment, at a young age, at 17, I seen so much that if I did not have a love for God as a child, if that pain did not have driven me to God, I don't know where I would be today. I seen more sin in church than you ever can see. Cocaine, lesbian, homosexuality, murder, mafia. I'm talking about right in the house of God. I seen so many preachers who would sleep with people, secretaries, and goes on. I mean, you can just name it in the church. I know about it, seen about it, have experienced some of it, but the wickedness is great. And I'm telling you, it didn't help me in my confusion, because I'm already confused, but I'm gifted. I'm gifted, and that became a struggle for me, because what I did is I took on the identity that I am a drummer and I am a preacher, and I got lost in being Apostle Jenkins. I got lost in being Elder Jenkins. I got lost in being minister. I had many names. I was minister in the Baptist church. Then I was Christian Charismatic. And then I was Apostolic. Then I was Church of God in Christ. So you take on different titles. All depends on what denomination you in at the time. And all of those, they would call me Elder and call me Apostle. And I believe I have an apostolic gift. Well, I understand that identity now. But I knew how to be Apostle, but I didn't know how to be Robert. I didn't wear a pair of jeans until I was 35 years old. I took my graduation pictures in a suit behind a desk like I was the pastor of a church, because I got so lost in my gift and lost in church and lost in religion. But Robert was crying out and saying, can I play basketball? What it is to walk in the park? I don't even know these things. And then another thing came on, because I was so anointed and so gifted. You tell me anointed man, I'll tell you a man who having some sexual problems. My sexuality was out of whack. So then I'm crazy with the women. So that didn't help, because then I'm hiding in that. I'm telling you. And even though I was growing up from woman to woman, from woman to woman to woman, and from church to church to church to church, from Bible to Bible to Bible, Robert was still lost. Who is Robert? Who is Duvall? Who is Vale? And you have to ask yourself, some of you have been given names. Some of you have been given names like Slick, or you've been called Killer, or whatever the case may be, or you Smooth, or so many names you was given before you understand your real identity, and you begin to live out those false names. And I didn't know it. I thought I was schizophrenic because I had so many personalities. I didn't know that my gift of discernment allowed me to become different personalities, and it was a clash because I didn't have any true affirmation. So I hope that I'm helping you. I'm hoping that we're talking about some things, and if you want to have some questions, please give me some questions and I'll come back and I'll answer those. But that's very important that we go back and find out. And God has to name us. God has to give you who you are. God has to affirm you. And that's so important as a man. As a man, and we need that father figure. We need somebody to make us have order in our life. Still today I struggle. And I have a special lady in my life that I love with all my heart, but I still struggle when we go to do certain things and I can't stand up and be the man. Even today, we went to take the grandkids swimming, and I wanted to stand up and deal with the guy, the man, and even though my wife is very qualified and she handled it, but something in my mind is still saying, you need to have as much opportunity as you can to speak as a man because I'm still struggling with, can I stand up and be that? Can I be responsible? Can I take over? See, this all comes from not knowing who you are. And if you're not careful, you tear your whole marriage over because you start saying stuff like, I'm the man, y'all let me do that. And even though those things should not define you, but if you have never been defined, you're looking for something that says you're the man now. So when I was young and I started paying bills, I felt so good because I was saying, you know what? I will not be gay and I'm not a weakling and I'm not a boy. I am a man because I can pay bills because I didn't have no affirmation. So that was so important for me. You know, even now I'm learning how to do gardening, and in my mind I be rejoicing because, wow, I'm a man because I know how to put a flower in the ground. See, all this stuff that we don't know. Or I know how to change the tire. Or I know how to get a battery for the car because I want to be responsible as a man. I want to be accountable, and I understand my childhood experience. And many men are struggling, and you as a wife or as a sister or as a mother is trying to figure out what's going on with my son. Why don't you know who he is? And I'm telling you, when you don't have identity, the devil can tempt you with anything. You'll become a crowd pleaser. Because you want to be loved. You want to be embraced. People has asked me, you know, you go through these marriages, Jenkins, how do you know so much about the Bible? And it seems you can't be successful in relationships. Because in every relationship, I'm hoping to be embraced. I'm hoping that I'm not left alone. See, because I got to be healed. And we need that. And I'm not telling you that I'm perfect. I'm telling you God has did so much for me. But I'm telling you that we must be honest with that. So I want to deal with that. A couple more things and then I'm going to stop. 36% of all children, if you see my dog, he just came out, so I'm playing with it. But 36% of all children go to bed without their father. So who covers them? And we must ask ourselves, do you have a covering? I mean a covering for your consciousness. I mean a covering for your emotions. Do you have a covering? Do you have a man of God in your life that can speak to you, that can pray and intercede for you, that can travail for you? Go to bed without a covering. It's so important. And then later we see the prisons system locked up with men. We see gangs have the ability to draw men. We see the Islam religion able to draw men. Why we lack men when it comes to Christianity? Why can't we get men in church? Why men don't come to Bible study? You know, I was at Bible study. I'm in a church now that I love dearly. And my pastor, Pastor Kevin, I'll call his name out. But I look around and he has such an awesome word. And sometimes I look around and maybe 4 or 5 men sometime in Bible study. That has nothing to do with his teaching. His teaching is tremendous. But we as men don't know how to humble ourselves. Be submissive. We don't know. See, and even that word, like a man's supposed to be submissive. Yeah, we're supposed to understand how to be guided, how to be corrected. We need to be led like women need to be led. We need to be taught that. That's so important. But we never had it in the home. And if you ain't had no man cover you in the home, you probably ain't going to let no man cover you in church. If your own father didn't cover you, see, this is the psychological that goes on in a man's mind. So a man doesn't know. So he doesn't know how to be a covering for another man. You know, it's sad that hugging a man and even kissing a man on the cheek had to become something of a culture before we could embrace it. When I grew up, you threw up the right on, man. What's up? What's up, dog? We had to go like that because don't hug me because I don't know how to be close to a man without it being in the wrong place sexually because we don't know how to have a covering. We're getting better now. So that's very key because we need that. And I'm telling you, man, if you have a son, if you have a daughter, are you there to make sure at night when they go, last thing they see your face? The last thing they hear you praying? That you let them know that it's safe here in this house and you can rest because daddy know how to lock the doors. And not only does he know how to lock the physical doors, he know how to lock the spiritual doors. That your father knows how to cover you, to teach you how to see men who are only after your body. That he can, do you have a father in your life that can tell you that as a young lady to protect you, know how to lock the doors in your mind, that a thief won't come in and rob you of your dignity, rob you of your virginity, rob you of your essence, rob you of your womanhood. But if you had a man in your life who cultivated you, who gave you a covering, but if he didn't have a father in his life that covered him, then how does he know how to cover you? And it goes on. I used to hate my father. I had a strong passion of hate for my father. But I was so selfish, even in my own perception. How could I hate him? He was 17 years old. He didn't know how to be a man. And not only that, my grandfather, who I love without a doubt, and I never want to mock his name, but my grandfather was very stern. and very spiritual. My grandfather was so stern that my father ran away. So a lot of things that my father didn't know is because of how he was raised. And a lot of times we upset with our dad, but we got to deal with our grandfather and our great-grandfather. Because a lot of things were passed down. We're learning. We didn't even learn how to read until the early. Even my grandfather was born 1902. He got saved 1916. My father born in the 40s. I believe I'm born in the 60s, so he had to be born in the 40s. So we are lacking a lot of things on what is a man. Back in the day, a man was, if he go to work and come home and pay the bills. He didn't have to learn how to love his wife. He didn't have to appreciate her. He did not know how to cultivate her. He didn't know how to listen. But he went to work. And that's what we call a man. So a lot of men, you think you're a man because you go to work and you pay bills. But you don't know how to be a husband or a father. And you think, you try to purchase your kids. That was one of the things that my father struggled with. And I'm just going to share some things with you, not to expose, because I love my dad and I talked to him the other day. And we have a great relationship and God has restored that. But I want to help you if you that father that is walking in that path. I remember a time when my father would drop off the penny bank. And then call us later and say, count the pennies and tell me how much. I didn't want no penny bank. I didn't want your money, Dad. I wanted my dad to love me. I wanted my dad to be there when I preached my message. I want to be able to, the first time I had somebody bully me in school, I want to be able to run home and tell Dad that I was bullied. So I took martial arts and I became psychotic in my emotions. In my mind, I told myself, you a killer. Because I didn't have no one to defend me in those situations. I was at a lot of jobs and a lot of different things. What happened? I didn't have no one to come home. This is very key. And this happened to men all over the world. I don't care if he's a bishop, he's an apostle, he's a prophet. He's struggling. And sons are struggling. And sometimes we get upset and mothers may say, my sons are in the gang. Your sons are in the gang because he's looking for somebody to cover him. And that gang leader would say, I'll cover you. And if you shoot somebody, I'll lie and say you didn't. It's a false covering, but it's real. Yeah, and you can be a part of us. And guess what? We're not looking for you to be perfect. So if you got some issues and you got your attitude, we'll love you and we will embrace that. And we'll give you a color. We'll identify you. So we'll call you the Bloods or the Crimps. And we'll stand fast for you. We'll shoot for you. And we'll make sure that you're taken care of. That's a form of a gang. And they got gangs all over the world. But we don't need gangs. We need fathers. And it's very key. And I could have found myself in that. And sometimes we're not in the Bloods and the Crips, but we're in the Christian gang. But we still lost, because even though we all praise God together and all shout together, we don't know who we are. And it's a real community. And I'm telling you, a lot of men are lost because they don't have that. So, and I'm just being honest, and I hope I'm not offending you, but I don't want to have another Father's Day, and Happy Father's Day, and then you all year you haven't been a father. And I'm not talking about just to put him down, but I'm talking about who gonna help him get on the right road. How long will you neglect your son? How long will you neglect your dad? Even for those who have fathers, but you won't call him on Father's Day because you feel like he don't never call me. Well, who's gonna start the healing process? This is so important. So we need that covering. So I went over some things, and I want 57% of all men in prison grew up without a father. You know why the prison industry is getting so strong? Because we don't have no fathers to teach us the right way. And it's sad to say that we are now led by the woman. When it comes to the church, the women is leading. When it comes to the school system, you got more women teachers than you got men. When it comes to most who raised a man is a woman. So now when he grew up and you say he's a weak man, he don't take a stand, he don't know how to stand on his own 2 feet, he fall for any women, she control him, and then you call it, he married a Jezebel. He married a Jezebel because the Jezebel raised him. Because we don't know how. And do mothers know how to get out of the way and let a man become a man? Or pray that God will send a man. I know the father in his life doesn't know how to be a man, but I have a son. God sent a man in my life. The church, we need men to help raise men. It's so key. And so I'm hoping that we get that. So if you don't find yourself with the right connection, the right real connection. When the last time you went in your son's room and you looked on the wall and he had a picture of the preacher on the wall? He got a picture of Michael Jordan on the wall when he was young. He got a picture of Bruce Lee when he was on the wall. He got a picture of girls in the XXX magazine, but he don't have no picture of his pastor. Is his pastor making the same impact on his life that Michael Jordan makes on his life? Does he make the same impact that Tiger Woods make on his life? What man of God do you walk in the room and your son is impacted by that man of God? Because we don't see that, because we need connection. And if you don't find yourself with the right connection, you will find yourself in a false connection, or a sex connection, or a gang connection. And I'm going to go through all of these connections. I got a list of them. God gave me a whole list of false connections that we join ourselves to. So you find yourself in prison, and not only maybe in a physical prison, but you find yourself in a mental prison. You're locked up. Your perceptions are locked up. You can't think outside yourself. You're so selfish because you haven't had no one to teach you how to cultivate and become the flower that God has caused you to become. Because we need that. So if 57% of all men who are in prison grew up without a father, what are you raising? Are you raising another inmate? So important. What's in church? We need to have men's meeting. We need to have men Bible studies. We need to have men prayer service. We say men are the lead, but we don't have enough things that geared towards raising the man up. And you're not a man because you can have sex with a woman, or because you have, what we call things between your legs. That don't make you a man. And we need a man to tell you that. And I don't care if you're 35 and 40, you still may not be a man. Still learning how to become a man. Even to desire it. To desire the responsibility, the accountability. Because it's easier for me to walk in when I'm gifted. But God is teaching me, and I have a love now for holiness and for standards. And that's why I'm taking out the time, and I'm giving my life, and I'm being transparent so that we can do that. So I want you, and I'm going to stop here. Any man that you know, if you're a woman, any man that you know, tell them that you can call me Pastor Jenkins, Robert Jenkins, Elder Jenkins, Apostle Jenkins, whatever. He's on Facebook. I want you to start listening. He's going to be on there. Get the notification, because we need to pray and intercede for men. If you have a son that's struggling with that, struggling with crack cocaine, struggling with robbing, stealing, false relationships, sexual activity, pornography, lack of identity, he egotistical, he thinks he's God himself, get the tape. Watch it over and over again. I'm trying to move slow so we can walk it, but it's very key that we understand that. So I'm going to ask you as I come to a close, if you're a man, do you know who you are? And who told you? Even if you say, I know, where'd you get the information from? What defines you as a man? What defines you as a son? Ask you another question. Do you want to become the man that God called you to become? Are you settling? You make $100,000 a year. Is that it? You have a wonderful wife and you have 3 kids. Is that it? You have a house and you have a patio. You have a fence and you got 2 dogs. Is that it? You own a business. Is that it? You got 14 men that love you. Is that it? Do you know for sure the greatness that's in you? Have you been handicapped in any type of way? Have you been crippled in any kind of way? Are you confident of who you are, that if God put you in a room with 50 outstanding, extraordinary thinkers, you will not feel insecure? Because you know who you are. Do you really, if you lost your job, lost your wife, lost your kids, lost your money, would you still know who you are? If nothing worked right for you, would you still work for you are? Do you still know who you are? If you had the greatest temptation, if you're on a vacation and your wife is nowhere around, and the finest woman that you ever think, whether it's J-Lo, whether it's Jennifer Lopez, whether it's Janet Jackson, whether it's Nia Long, if she came to you and she was butt naked, could you turn her down because you know how to stand as a man of God and not fall into sin or iniquity? If somebody threw out 30 bags of millions of dollars and you knew without a doubt that they had just robbed somebody, killed that family, would you tell? See, I'm testing your integrity. Because a lot of times we say our men, but there's some tests that proves that we don't have the integrity as a man. And maybe you may be the person that don't need all them stories. You say, Jenkins, my story may not be as bad as yours and it may be worse. But I have been struggling and don't know who I am and trying to learn who I am. I know that I'm coming short. And I want to become that man that God has called me to be. Not only do I want to become that man, I need to apologize to my son. I need to be a better father. I need to begin to heal that relationship. And I'm going to talk about the difficulties, the easy side and the hard side of redemption. And we're going to walk it being realistic. I had to have some serious conversations. I hope you've been blessed. This is Robert Jenkins. And remember, every man and every son still need their daddy.